Hey guys, so this is our first lab since we moved to online lecture and labs. And so before we get started on the lab, I want to talk to you a little bit about how things are going to go. And so Dr. Dodd and I decided that we will split the 4 labs in between us. So I am going to talk to you about exercise 37 and exercise 38, and Dr. Dodd is going to talk to you about the exercises 39 and 40. We will post our videos about the labs on Monday, but you have all week to watch it and to send us the lab reports. And for the ones that have quizzes as well for my group, you will have as well until the end of the week to send me those quizzes. And so the quiz, they are always about the exercise that we have done the week before. So the quiz that you have this week is about exercise 36. Okay, so today we will talk about exercise 37, which talk about 2 phyla, the phylum Platyhelminthes and the phylum Nematoda. So what I would like you guys to do is to take your manual, I have it right next to me as well, just in case I forget something, and kind of follow along what's going on, okay? So you need to understand everything that is in your manual, so if you have any question, you can also contact me about it. Okay, so exercise 37, like I said, talk about 2 phyla, and those phyla, they have a common point, is that they talk about worms, 2 kinds of worms. The Platyhelminthes are flatworms, and then the Nematoda are called roundworms. If you look at the words and what it means, we have helminthes over here. This means worms, and then plat, it means flat, and so those are the flatworms. And then for the Nematoda here, this means thread-like worm, and so those are roundworms. Okay, so those are a little bit more complicated than the first animals that we talked about. We talked about sponges that were very simple. They had just like 1 layer of cell. And then we talked about cnidaриans that were slightly more complicated. They had very simple tissues, like a nervous tissue, a muscle tissue, and the germ layer that they have are ectoderm and endoderm. All the organisms that we will see from now on, including the ones that we will talk about today, have a 3rd germ layer that is called the mesoderm. This is written over here. And that mesoderm is located right in between the ectoderm and the endoderm. So this is what you see on the figure over here for the flatworm, and then on the figure over here for the roundworm. I also added the figure for the earthworm that we will see next week. And so you can see ectoderm toward the outside, mesoderm toward the inside, and then endoderm toward the inside, and then mesoderm in between those 2 layers. Because those organisms have 3 layers, we refer to those as triploblastic organism, and this is written just here. It means that they have 3 germ layers. Okay. Okay. So the next thing that you have to know is that in organisms that are triploblastic, there is the possibility for them to have a body cavity in their mesoderm. And so that body cavity is called a xylem. This is written right here, xylem. And this would be in human, for example, the xylem is the body cavity that is in between the wall of your belly and your intestine. Okay, so in flatworm, there is no cavity in the mesoderm. If you look at that yellow area, that yellow layer, it's fully compact, no xylem, so we refer to them as acoelomate, which means no xylem. And then in the roundworm, there is a body cavity, but it's not located inside the mesoderm. It's located in between the mesoderm over here and in between the endoderm over here, you see the space here. This is the body cavity. Because it's not inside the mesoderm, we don't talk about it as cellum, but we talk about it as pseudocellum because it's almost a body cavity, not a proper one, so that's where the name comes from. And then sometimes we also refer to it as pseudocell, and that is what is written over here. So now you know the main difference between those two kinds of worms. The third kind of worms, the annelids, they have a proper body cavity, so they have a proper cellum, and this is what you see here. That body cavity, there's one part over here, one part over here. It is fully surrounded by the mesoderm, and so it is a proper cellum. So we refer to those organisms as coelomates. And then every organism that we'll see after that, the arthropods, the mollusk, the echinodermata and the chordata, they are all coelomate organisms. So they're all similar to the annelids. Okay, so now that you know that, we're going to move on to the next slide. The next slide jump into the phylum Platyhelminthes. Okay, so the flatworms, and this is to talk about the class that is called Turbellaria. It's written over here. And in that class, mainly what we have are organisms that we refer to commonly as planarian. And those can be found in freshwater or seawater. Actually, the one in seawater are really, really pretty. They're like super colorful. So those are really cool. And if you want to see pictures of them, you can just Google it, planarian or flatworm, seawater, and you'll find a bunch of pictures from those. Okay, so in the manual, they tell you procedure 37.1, observe a planarian. Since you're not here, you won't be able to look at the ones that we have here, but I'm going to play a video. And before I play it, I want you to look for a few things in that video. So in that video, you will see the flatworm, which is located right here. On the top of the video, and you can see its head. It has two little black dots. Those are called eye spots. It allows the worm to kind of detect light, to see shadow, and then it allows them to direct their movement. And then they have like little ears that are pointed on the side of the head, so you'll be able to see that as well. And then what they used to eat is called a pharynx, and it's located in the middle of their belly. And what it is, it's like a tube, and the tube can come out of their belly and grab the food and then retract back in the belly. So it's really cool, and that's how they feed. And then well, the kind of tissue that you have in flatworms are limited mostly for the purpose of doing digestion and the purpose of doing reproduction. In the video, you will also be able to see how they move. So you can see that, you'll be able to see that they can extend their body, they can contract it. So that means they have multiple kind of muscles. And we refer to those muscles as circular muscles and longitudinal muscles. And then you'll see that they're extremely flat. That's why they belong to that phylum. And their skin is extremely thin, and that's how they actually are able to acquire oxygen. They do simple diffusion through the skin, their skin. Okay, so I'm going to play it. The yellow thing is their food. Okay. So you can see they're actually feeding them with yolk. And you can see the pharynx, it's pointed on it. You can see it's moving in and out of the body. You can see their head wiggling around and their little eyes. Here you can see how flat they are. And so if you would have been here, you would have been able to see that. But those, you can find them actually in ponds. You can find them on the mud. And so if you want to see one real, just go to a pond and try to get some mud, and then you can grab it with a jar and then let it settle, and then you should be able to see flatworms if there is any flatworms. Another thing that is pretty cool with those flatworms is that they can do regeneration. And what that means, it means that if you cut them in half, then the two halves can become two flatworms. if you cut the head in 2 or in 3, then you can create a flatworm that has 2 or 3 heads. So it's really cool organism. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. The next slide, we have wall mount. This is what you would see if you would look at a wall mount of a planarian. And the differences between this one and this one is that on the bottom picture, they actually use a stain, a dark stain, to be able to see everything that is related with the digestive system. So if you look at number 2, everything that is in black all over here, this is part of the gastrovascular cavity. And then in the middle, number 1, which we also kind of distinguish on the picture above, this is the pharynx. So the pharynx, like I said, it's in the middle of the body. It can come in and out, and they use that. The extremity of the pharynx is used as the mouth, and so they use that for feeding. The little number 3 shows the 2 eye spots that they use to be able to detect light. And then the number 4, which is not very visible here, but you've seen it very well on the video, the little ear-like structures that you have on the side that we call auricle. Okay, the other thing that we see here and that is not labeled is the presence of the reproductive structures. So if you look over here, in the anterior part of the body, just before the pharynx, then the little network that you can kind of guess here represent the ovaries and the uterus. And then toward the back of the worm, you would have all the testes. And so those worms are able to reproduce asexually, because if they get cut in 2, then it makes 2, or they can also naturally do fragmentation. And then they can reproduce sexually if they produce sperm and eggs. Okay, next slide. These are cross-section of the flatworm. So what you have here is, this one is a cross-section that would be very close to the head. This one is a cross-section that would be in the middle, where there is the pharynx. And this one would be a cross-section further back toward the tail of the worm. And so if you look at figure 37.3 on your manual, you have a section that is similar to what we have in that middle section over here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and what you can see here. So the first thing, the main thing that you can see is the pharynx. All of that here is the pharynx. There's the pharyngeal cavity in here, and then all of that, those are muscles. So there is longitudinal muscles and circular muscles. And then toward the periphery of the pharynx, you have epidermis, because when the pharynx comes out, it needs protection, so there is epidermis that surround it. And then that white ring is the pharynx cavity, okay? So that's what contains the pharynx when it's retracted inside the body. Okay, toward the outside, you have the epidermis of the worm all over here. And then those things that you see here on that side, over here as well, and then on the other cross-section where I'm pointing to right now, all of the structures, same for the bottom part section. Those are branches of the gastrovascular cavity. So it's basically their digestive system, their intestine, and so it branches, it goes all over the body, and this is what you see. Now, in between that, over here, you would have the testes, and over here, in between the branches of the gastrovascular cavity, you would have the uterus and the ovaries. Okay, so next one. This slide is about the next class. Now we are going to talk about the class Nematoda, and the common name for that class is flukes. All of those are flatworms that are parasites. That's a big difference with the flatworms that we just seen. The planarians are free-living flatworms, meaning that they just swim in the water by themselves. While the Nematoda, the flukes, they are all parasites, okay? and they are able to either be parasite on the outside of the host, and in that case we will talk, if I can write, I'm going to try to write, work, let me see here, okay, we call them ectoparasite, okay, not the bits writing with the mouse, but ectoparasite, those are the flies that live on the outside of their host, and then some that live inside are called endoparasite. I'm just going to write P for endoparasite, okay? So the first one that they ask us to look at is the oriental liver fluke, and this is a endoparasite. So this is what you see over here. I'm going to go back to my pointer. This is what you see over here. This is a endoparasite. It's an oriental liver fluke. So this parasite likes to live in the liver of organisms. And so this is a hallmark of the fluke. And so we can look at, if you look at the manual, you have a representation of that on figure 37.5. And so I'm gonna describe this slide. So this is here the anterior part of the body. How do I know? Because I can see the mouth over here, and it also has a sucker that allows the fluke to attach to the whatever organ they attach to, so the liver for this one. And then those tubes here that you see is divided, it's a tube divided in two. You have one part over here, and then one part over here. These are the gastrovascular cavities, so it's their intestine, okay? And then the rest that you see, most of the rest anyhow, what you have over here, this is part of the female reproductive structures. Those are the uterus. It's actually one that branches a little bit, so one uterus. And then that area over here is the ovary. And then on the other side, toward the posterior part of the worm, you have the testis. And then that clear area that you see, this is the seminal receptacle. So what it is, it's where the sperm is going to be received and stored, and is going to go and fertilize the eggs that are contained in the uterus. Okay, so what you see, because there is male and female reproductive organs, you know that this is a hermaphrodite organism, just like the planarian that we've seen before. Okay, I think that's all for that one. We can move on to the next Nematoda. If it works, let me go back. Okay. Oh, I forgot. I added the life cycle of this liver fluke. It is similar to what you have on figure 37.6. It's a different picture, but it's telling you the same thing. So I want to talk about it because flukes have a very particular life cycle that is extremely dangerous for them because they are specific of certain hosts, and they want to go from one host to another in a specific order depending of what stage you look at. So if we look at the adult liver fluke, which is over here, like I told you, they make eggs. And so when you go, if you're infected with that liver flukes, when you go to the bathroom, you are going to release the eggs. And so this is how the eggs looks like. And then inside the eggs, we have larvae that we call miracidia. It's written over here. And those are going to be released from the egg and swim in the water. And so that's what you have here, the larvae. And this is how it looks like. It swims in the water. And then eventually it's going to enter the body of a snail. They're going to go in the muscle of the snail, and it's going to form a sporocyst. And so this is where it lives for a little while. And then eventually it becomes another stage that we call the regiase stage, that is over here. And those are going to reproduce inside the snail. and be released in the water. And when they release in the water, they form what we call the cercaria, which are those structures here. They have like a head kind of structure, and then a tail, a flagellum that allow them to swim in the water. And then when they swim in the water, they want to find the next host. And the next host is a host that likes to feed only the things that move in front of it. The next host is a fish. And so when fish find those cercaria, they're just like, that's going to be good. And they go and they eat them. And that's the wrong move because they won't be able to digest them. Instead, the cercaria is going to travel from the intestine of the fish all the way to their muscles. And in the muscles, they are going to become the metacercarial cyst. And they're going to stay there until something or somebody come and eat the fish. And so when that somebody eat the fish, if they don't cook it enough, then the cysts are going to be able to survive, and that is how the next host is being infected by the fluke. So flukes have a very complicated life cycle. They need for this case in here, they need 3 different hosts at a particular time of their life cycles. It's a pretty dangerous life cycle. Okay, next slide. This is the next Nematoda that we need to look at. This is a sheep liver fluke. If you look at it, it's a little bit bigger. It's slightly different, not that much though. There is still the anterior part over here, and there is the mouth here with a sucker just over here as well. Then over here, this is a ventral but quite anterior sucker as well. So those allow the fluke to anchor on the liver of the host. And then the rest of the worm is mainly for digestive and reproductive organs, and what we see on this picture are the reproductive organs. You have the uterus over here, the ovaries over here. All that is filled with the testes, and that light tube that you see, this is still the seminal receptacle, just like the worm that we talked about before. Okay. The next one is a little bit different. It's still a flatworm. It still belongs to the class Nematoda, but what is different about schizostoma, the blood fluke, is that first they are smaller than the one before. They don't attach to a specific organ, but they live in the blood. So they live in a specific place, but they don't attach to cells in particular. And the second major difference with the other Nematoda is that the blood flukes, they are not hermaphrodite. Instead, we have a male and a female individual. So if we look at this picture, we see both on here. You have the male is that really wide one over here, and the female is that really thin and long one. Okay, and so they live together, and what happened is that you have the male that is wider, and it's going to fold its body, and if my hand is like the worm, it's going to create something like that. And the female is going to locate itself in the male worm, so that the male is protecting the female to have her there and available to do reproduction. So it's a little bit different than the other ones. Okay, next one. We move on to the next class of Platyhelminthes. The next class is called Cestoda, and the common name for this class is tapeworm. And so tapeworms, I'm sure you heard about those. They are very common parasite that we find in our pet. So here the picture represents the one from a pork, but you can have those infecting your cats, your dogs, or your farm animals. Those are very common worms to get. And we can also be infected by those if we eat an animal that has it in their muscles and we don't cook the meat enough. That's a common way to get affected. And then another way to get affected is if you pet your pets and they have them, and they have like one of the segment of the tapeworm on their body, then potentially you can get affected if you're not too careful with that. Those also make eggs, so when the cats or the dogs lick themselves, they can put them a little bit all over, so it's very easy to be affected by those guys. So that's why you don't want them in your pet, so that you don't get them yourself. Okay, so what do we have here? We have two pictures. The one on the left represents the different segments that you can find in the worm, and then the one on the right shows you the equivalent of the head of the worm. The specific name for the head is colex. It's written over here. And actually, I have a model, so I'm going to show you the model. This is a model, okay? It shows you the scolex over here, so all that is the scolex, and you can see that it has multiple things on it. It has hooks here, and then it has suckers. The suckers are the yellow spot over here, so it's all around the scolex. There is the hooks and the suckers, and the point of those is that the tapeworm, they live in the intestine of organisms, so the hooks are going to anchor like that. It's going to anchor the worm inside on the wall of the intestine, and then the suckers are going to help anchoring the worm. Okay, and then what you have after the scolex, you have like a neck area, and then you have segments. See, they are a little bit small, and then they become larger and larger and larger, and if you would go way further down the worm, then it would be even larger than that. So those worms, they can be several meters long, if you're talking feet, even longer. I mean, not longer, but more feet. Okay, so this is what you see here. There is a sucker over here. There is a sucker over here, and those little black things, those are the hooks. Okay, so this allows the worms to attach to the intestine. Then we have the neck, and then we have the first few segments. The way the worm reproduce asexually is that it increases the number of segments. So the segments that are close to the scolex, they are very immature, young segments, and further away you go from the scolex, more mature those segments are. There is a specific name for the segments. It's called proglottids, and it's written over here. See, proglottids over here. This is the name for every segment. Okay, so every segment is one proglottid. The one at the very beginning, like I say, very small, immature, they become larger and larger. This is a little bit further away. You can see it's still immature, but it's larger. It's about to become mature. And then in those ones, they're larger and they are mature. And how do I know it's mature? Besides the fact that there's a label, it's because I can see this area over here. These are the uterus. It's the uterus of the organism. And this is ready for fecundation, okay? So those are hermaphrodite worms. That means that they don't have just the uterus and the ovaries, they also have the testes, and they use that to do autofertilization. On the top part of this section, you have two full proglottids that you can see, one here and one here. And the network that you can see inside are the uterus that are full of eggs that were fertilized. Okay? And so if you look at the name of the proglottids, there is the immature, before being ready for reproduction. The mature, they're ready for reproduction. And when they have done fertilization, we talk about gravid proglottids. Okay? All right, I'm going to zoom on that, and just so that you can see it a little bit better. So this is a gravid proglottid. You can see most of it. And all that you see here, all of that, it's branches of the uterus, and that is filled with eggs. And these, the eggs are going to be able to be released in the environment through that little tube here, and then the little hole that is over here. This is called the genital pore, and it allows us to release those eggs. Okay, next. Here we have a picture of a different tapeworm. It is still a tapeworm, but this one is extremely long. You can see you actually don't have the scolex on that, but there's the beginning over here, and then it goes all the way. They folded it a bunch just to use less space, and it goes all the way up to here. This is a scale of 5.5 meters, which means it's like about double my size, and so it's extremely long worms. So if you get affected by that, you can imagine that it's going to probably anchor itself at the beginning of your intestine and then run all the way up to the end of your intestine. They can get gigantic worms. Okay, so the next done in class Nematoda. We talked about everything that is in the manual. So we're done with Platyhelminthes. And we are going to move on to the phylum Nematoda. Those are the roundworms, okay? Not all Nematoda are parasites. We actually have both kinds, just like in the Platyhelminthes. So either you have free-living Nematoda or you have parasites Nematoda. So in the procedure 37.2, I left 3 here, but I meant 2. They ask you to look at different living nematodes, and we are going to look at the ones that is called vinegar eel. In your book, it's called, they put the Latin name, and it's Turbatrix. Okay, so that video, I'm not going to play all of it. What I want you to look at are all of those little white things, and those are all individual worms, and so those are called vinegar eels. They like to grow into vinegar. Now, the one that you buy at the store, has been filtered and sterilized. But if you make your own vinegar, then potentially you could be able to see those vinegar eels. So I'm going to play it just for a second. I'm going to go straight. So here you can see those little worms. They move at the surface of the vinegar. They just can wiggle. They can't extend themselves, so they have just one kind of muscles. They just have longitudinal muscles.
Portion is then poured.
You can see, allow them just to wiggle. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for that. So those are extremely small worms. They are maybe 3/8 of an inch, just the pretty small worms. Okay.
Through a coffee filter.
We're gonna move on to the next part. So the next part, they in the manual they ask you to do a dissection of the roundworms that are commonly affecting our pets, or that can also affect us. So those are parasites worms, and they like to live in the intestine. And they are not hermaphrodite worms. They are either male or female, and they do sexual reproduction. So before we look at the dissection, I put that picture over here. You can see one individual here. It's a large, long one, and one that is way smaller over here. And it has like a curly tail that you can see over here. So the first one, this one, is a female. Female are always larger and longer than the male, and the reason for that is because they need to have a lot of space to be able to make eggs and release their eggs. So this is the reason why they tend to be bigger. The males, they just produce a lot of sperms. They don't need that much space. Sperm cells are always smaller than egg cells, so that is probably why they're smaller. Okay, so on that picture, they tell you here's the head for the female, here's the head for the male, here's the tail for the male, and here's the tail for the female. If you look at the male, you're just like, oh, well, that's easy. The male, its tail is curly, so I can find easily where it is. Now for the female, if you just look at it, then it's really hard. And so the best way to differentiate the head, the anterior part, from the posterior part, is to pop it under a dissecting microscope and to look at both extremities. If you find just a little hole, then it's probably the anus. And if you find something that looks like three little pads and a hole in the middle, then it's the head. So I put a picture to show you, put a picture to show you better how it looks like. This is one little pad, it's a lip. This is another lip over here and another lip over here. So you have those three little lips. And so in the middle, you have the little cavity, the little hole. This is the mouth. Okay, so if you see that, you see this is the anterior part of the worm. If you don't see it, then it has to be the posterior part of the worm. Okay, and then the second thing I want to show you is if we zoom on the tail of a male, this is what you would see. You would see high curls, and then you would see two little things. There is just one that we see on that picture, that little thing here. Normally there's another one, probably just hidden by the way the picture was taken here. And those are the penile spicules of the worm. This is called, I'm going to write it for you. I wish I could use that. It doesn't work. Okay, it is called penile spicules. Okay, I don't know why I keep making bars, but you can see what I wrote. Okay, so those are the reproductive organs for the male. It allows it to fertilize the female. Very easy. Okay, so next thing. Okay, normally you're supposed to learn how to do the dissection of those worms. Okay, it's pretty simple. I'm gonna play the video and I'm gonna mute it so I can say what I want and describe a little bit all that. So mute. Okay, so this is a female roundworm. Okay, and so you can see you have the anterior part of the body over here, the posterior part of the body over here, and then all of the skin is called the cuticule. Okay, and it allows them to it's pretty tough. It allows them to be protected from the digestive enzymes of their host, just so that they don't get attacked by the host. But it's thin enough so that they can do breathing through their cuticule. Okay, okay. So normally the way you do the dissection, you pin the anterior part, you pin down the posterior part, and then you can use either scissors or scalpels to cut through it. So that's what he's doing. He's pinning the anterior part, then he's gonna be pinning the posterior part. Here he goes, and then he's gonna use the scalpel, and the best way to cut is to not go too deep or you would destroy all the organs. You just want to use the tip of the blade and cut very slowly and kind of try to just cut the skin, just cut the cuticule. Okay, so I'm going to move a little bit forward. See, you cut here a little bit, then you use tweezers to pull on the side the cuticule and pins to pin it down, and then you can start seeing the organs. Okay, so what do we have in the roundworms? The functions of the roundworms are mainly to eat, to be able to survive, and produce enough energy to be able to reproduce. And so therefore the second main function is reproduction. So most of the things that are that we are going to be able to see are reproductive and digestive organs. I'm going to go all the way up to 5.10. You can watch the whole video if you want. 5.10 almost. Okay, this is most of the worm that he opened. Okay, I'm gonna pause that for a second. So what do we see when we open it? What we have here is the inside part of the cuticule. What lines the inside part of the cuticule are muscles. They are the muscles that allow the worm to wiggle. Okay, so those are all longitudinal muscles, meaning that they start in the anterior part of the body and they run through the length of the worm. Okay, there's also a line that allowed them to release their waste, and then all of that you see over here, those are all reproductive organs. So I'm gonna go back up playing it. He's talking about the cuticule and the organs. Here we're gonna zoom on that. Okay, so what you look at, what he's touching, those are the oviduct. And the oviduct is the place where you're gonna have reproduction. And here what he's opening, I'm gonna pause it because it doesn't pause it. And the reason why I don't make you listen to what he says is because he's not saying everything that you should know. So I'm gonna talk about it. Here, there's an area that looks like a V, and that V is the vagina. So it's very easy to remember, V for vagina. This is where the sperm are going to enter, and then those sperms are going to travel through those two large tube or noodles-like structures. Those two large tubes are the uterus. So there's one here that you see a little bit. There's one on the back over here. Those uterus, they are going to, the tube are going to become smaller and less wide. And this is what we see over here. And those smaller noodles are the oviduct. Okay, so you have two uteruses or uteri, so two sets of oviducts, and then they are going to keep going. And from thinner noodles, you can kind of see here a little bit smaller, but it should become way smaller, thin like hair, thin noodles. And those are the ovaries where the eggs are being produced. Okay, so if I summarize, the eggs are being produced in the ovaries, the little noodles. They move to the larger noodles, which are the oviduct, and then it moves to the even larger noodles, which are the uterus, and it goes all the way up to the vagina that you see over here that has that V shape and then divide in two. And that is, there's going to be a genital pore somewhere over here where the eggs can be released. Okay, so I'm going to let him show you a little bit more. He unfortunately doesn't show the ovaries, so I'll show you a picture in a little bit so that you can see better. What you see is that when you do the dissection of the ascaris is that usually the organs break very easily. This is mainly due because of the preservative that are used, but this is what happens. So here is opening a little bit, separating the uteri, and then he's moving away the oviduct a little bit, and what we want to see is a little bit more. And he's actually going to show you another organ. I'm going to let him kind of pull it out a little bit. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I told you they don't just do reproduction, they need to get energy to be able to do reproduction. So what is lifting right now, that flatter tube, this is the intestine. And the intestine starts from the mouth and run through the whole body all the way up to the anus. Okay, so this runs through the whole length of the organism. So we see the beginning here, but it would go all the way down. Okay, that's about it for how you would do the dissection if you would ever want to do it. And then we are going to move and look at pictures of dissections that were done already, just so that we get a clear picture of how things look like. So here you have labels. I'm going to try to go slow, but I want to describe everything. So we're going to start with the number one. This is a female. Number one, show that V structure over here. Remember, V for vagina, okay? And then the number two represent the little hole that is right before the vagina. And this is just called the genital pore, okay? So genital pore, vagina. Remember, the vagina divided into two tubes that run over here. One here goes all the way up to over here. And then the other side goes all the way like that, all the way to somewhere around here. This is labeled with number 3, and number 3 are the the uteri in plural and uterus in singular. Each of them then become smaller noodles that you can kind of see all over here, and those are the oviduct. This is what number 4 is. And then number 5 is those really thin, you can see it better here, like all of that. Those are the ovaries, and that is all of the female reproductive structure. And I told you the next thing that we have is the intestine. So you can see over here all of that if you follow my my pointer. All of that is the intestine. It runs all the way up to the back. The 8 is for the end of the intestine. What do you think is there? The rectum. Very easy. So 8 is the rectum, and then 9 is for the anus. Okay, we don't see the mouth here because the worm is too long and it wouldn't fit on the picture. But you have it. You have most of the organs over here. Okay. Oh, I forgot number 6. Number 6 is the line that is involved for excretion, and it's actually even labeled here on the male lateral line for excretion, where you have all the excretory canals. Okay, so this is a male. Once again, we don't see the mouth. The mouth will be somewhere over there. We can see the intestine here that run all the length of the worm all the way up to the rectum, and then the anus somewhere over there. And then they pulled out the reproductive structure of the males, and you can see it looks like noodles, just like in the female. You have really thin noodles, hair-like noodles here, a little bit thicker over here, and then it become even thicker over here. So all of those are the different part of the male reproductive organs, and I'm gonna make sure I don't miss everything. Okay, so the sperm cells, right, are made in the testes, just like in human. Testes are the very thin thread-like duct over here. So number 10 are the testes. Then it become thicker, and this is the equivalent to what we have in male, in human as well. It is called the vas deferens or the ductus deferens. And if you wonder how to write that, I'm gonna write it. I'm gonna write vas deferens because it is easier, shorter. Vas deferens. Okay, so this is what you have after the testes. And then for number 12, right? Number 12 here, yes. This is the last part, and this is called the seminal vesicle. So it's what is going to carry the sperm toward the outside of the worm. And then in the number 13, we have the ejaculatory duct and the genital pore together. So this is all you have in the ascaris, male and female separated. Okay. Next, let me okay. So the next step in procedure 37.3, I think, yes, 0.3 still, they ask you to look at cross section of the worm. Okay, so cross section of ascaris and cross section of male and female, and you have that on the figure 37.16 as well in your manual. But here we're going to make it simple, and what we want you to remember is what is on those cross section over here. Okay, so on the left, sorry, you have the female, and then on the right you have the male. How do I know that? It's because the female reproductive organs are larger than in the male, and so you can see here the uterus that contain plenty of eggs. That gray shadow, those little dots here, those are eggs. Same over here. So those are two sections of the uterus of the female. The little one here are the ovary. This is most likely ovary as well. The reason I know that, usually when you do cross section, you can see uterus and either ovary or uterus and and maybe a little bit of the vagina as well, but that's pretty much what you see at the same time. Okay, and then in the male, all of those little tubes here, all of those are really, really small, so it's most likely the testis. The larger tube here is the intestine. In the female, we see it even flatter and bigger because females are larger, so that's what you see here. The two other things that is not labeled here are the cuticle on the outside. Okay, all that on the outside is the cuticle. This is the pseudocellum over here, pseudocellum, and then the gray shadow that you have here lining the cuticle, and those are the longitudinal muscles. So it creates like little things like that. And if I can draw it, I guess it'd be even better. Little things like that. I don't know why I keep doing those weird balls, but you got the gist of it. And so those are how the longitudinal muscles looks like. Okay, so that's all for this section. Sorry about the mess with my pointer. Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about other nematodes, not just ascaris. So we're going to see a few other parasitic nematodes. On procedure 37.4, they ask you to look at different kind of those parasitic nematodes. So I put pictures here. The first one is called Trichinella, and this is classically what we find in like wild animals, also cattle and pork and organisms like that. So what you have on these pictures, those are section of the muscle of the host, and so all of that is muscle. Okay, and then inside you have cyst, and this is a cyst, and it contains section or eggs of worms, of nematodes, of Trichinella. And here you have another cyst. This is just cut a little bit differently. You don't see cross section of the worm. This is a single worm, just like that. This is multiple cross section of the same worm, most likely. And this is one single worm, longitudinal one. And you can see not all of it. You miss a little bit of it here, but you can see a lot of it. So if you eat an organism that have that in its muscles, then potentially if it's not cooked enough, you could get that one. The next one is called Necator, and those are the hookworms. So that's what you see over here, the little hooks over here, and those are also intestinal parasites. And then the next one is called the Enterobus. Those are pinworms. They're also intestinal parasites. You can see the mouth here with the sucker. You can see its digestive and reproductive organs that we see. Those are very common in pets as well, or children. The reason for children to be affected by the pinworm is that you can find pinworm in dirt, and so when kids go out and play in the dirt and they put their fingers in their mouth, they can get affected by that. The way you would know that they are affected, when the female go and lay eggs, they go all the way up to the anus, and they lay their eggs there, and so it makes it very itchy, and so that's usually how you realize your kids have that. Okay, and then the last worm is a little bit different. It's a worm that live in the heart mainly. This is, the Latin name is called Dirophilaria. And so this is a section of a blood smear, and so all of those like grayish cells, those are white blood cells. Okay, this is human white blood cells. Those cells here, that one here, that one here, that one here, those are white blood cells. You have two here, two white blood cells. You have another one here. You can even see the platelets if you're interested. Those little dot here, here, here. Those little dots, you see, those are platelets. And then that big thing here, this is one of those heartworms. So if you heard about dogs having heartworms, this is how it looks like. And that's about it. This is all for our first lab online. So remember, you have to submit your lab report. Hopefully, you were able to get all the information that you needed. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email, send me a message on GroupMe or Facebook, whatever way you want. I would be very happy to help you and answer your question. And don't forget to study for the quiz next week. Bye-bye.